Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. Let's get started. I've been doing my NFL takeaways and predictions for each week, and also college football predictions and all that. But I want to take a break from that, and for this video specifically, do NBA style. Um, so, I mean, if you're into football, then you're not paying as much attention to the NBA as. But then there's some stuff that you try to do your best, like, oh, who's out with COVID, who has an injury, who's on a win streak, who's on a lose streak, yada yada yada. And at this point in the NBA, we still don't know a lot of things quite yet. That's more until the All Star break is where you really get a feel for it. But I feel like as Christmas time comes around, I feel like okay, now we're starting to see the flaws, see the strengths, and you can kind of think, okay, this is how this team would do in this scenario in the playoffs or so forth. So for this exercise, I'm going to discuss some teams and reveal if they are a true contender or not. Um, and I'm not going to use a bunch of stats, and bore you with that. I'm just going to go with purely off the eye test here, and then also how the roster is in general. Now, the requirement for being a contender is that you have to make at least the conference title game. Like, can I see you in that conference title game? If I can, then I'll label you as a contender. But if you're gonna go out first or second round, and that's your ceiling, then I just can't label you as a contender. So here we go, and this is in random order. Let's start off with Brooklyn though, and for me, they are obviously contender. Now Kyrie's going to be back part time, but that's mainly because of all their COVID issues and all that. So we'll see. Like even when all the players come back from COVID, it'll be interesting to see if he remains part time, or they're gonna be like, oh no, now we're not gonna have you anymore until you get vaccinated, blah blah blah. Because he can only play in road games basically. I think it'll be interesting what happens there. But as far as without Kyrie Irving, though, I feel like there's still there's still flaws to them, mainly with their size and all that. And also, they give KD and Harden, especially KD, a lot of minutes. So it's like, it's kind of dangerous to be giving him a lot of minutes because then he might, be burnt out for the playoffs. But when you have KD and Harden on the team, you're always going to be a contender, in my opinion, no matter how the rest of your roster is. Next, you got Washington. I'm going to have them as a pretender. I know they got to a hot start, but they're already showing their true colors right now. They're actually, on the slide. And it was, a fun little moment thing while it lasted, but you got Beal, who's a good player, but other than that, you just got a bunch of B's and C's on the team, so I don't know how they're overachieving at the beginning of the season. But it's a team that they can still make the playoffs, actually, but, rookie head coach. I just don't think Beal's a number one on a championship team, so Washington's a pretender. Atlanta. This may surprise you, but I'm going to go pretender here. I know they made it last year to these conference finals, but let's face it, they got an easy first round matchup with the team who can't shoot, and then Philly who gagged multiple times. I feel like they could make the second round potentially, but I just don't see them getting back to Eastern Conference Finals this year. Right now, I think it wouldn't surprise me if they're destined for the playing games. But like Washington, but they have a bunch of good. You got Young, who's a good player, but they got a bunch of B's and C's. I just don't feel like they're gonna win a championship like that. Milwaukee, I'm obviously going with them as a contender. The only reason why they're struggling right now is because Middleton's been out multiple times. He was out with COVID, now he's out with an injury. Giannis been off and on with injuries, and there's Drew Holiday's off an injury. Now there's a bunch of COVID cases, So they've actually really never had the whole team together all season so far because at the beginning of the season Bob Portis was out, now Brook Lopez is out. Like it's just kind of a revolving door type of thing. So I feel like once they can get everyone healthy, they can figure it out. Now, are they the same team as last year? No. I know they got George Hill and Roddy Hood, some bench players, but Sam Ojale, but it's just like I don't feel like they're the exact same team as last year, which I feel like last team is a little bit better, but they're still good enough to win a championship. Next, I'm going to go Chicago. This one, I'm actually going to go with contender. Now, they're probably not going to make the finals, but I could definitely see them sneaking their way into the Eastern Conference Finals. So that's why I say they're contender. I mean, I did not think that way this preseason. I thought, okay, a bunch of good pieces. They'll finally make the playoffs. Be pressure nice about. I mean, before a COVID outbreak ran through their team, basically, I liked what I was seeing from them. DeRozan was playing like an all star again. Even like he should be a starter all star. Like that's how good he's been playing. Levine's doing his thing. Vucevic is doing his thing, although he could be better. Lonzo Ball was playing really well. Alex Caruso is the kind of the big piece addition, that's kind of gone under the radar. So I just feel like, again, while they're not the deepest team by any means, I feel like with their core, I feel like they could be a last year. I can see them making a run to Eastern Conference Finals. Next, you got Miami. I'm gonna go with contender here. Now, it won't look like that for the next few months because Bam Adebayo's out for months and Jimmy Butler's injured once again. Shocker. But Oladipo's still coming back, and then plus, Tyler Hero. The resurgence of Tyler Hero has been amazing this year. Like he's playing like he did in the bubble, which is good for Miami. And of course, Kyle Lowry, Tucker, and Morris have been good additions. Acquisitions, and they've been playing well so far. And then they even have undrafted free agents like Strauss, and Vincent, who have been stepping up to the play and contributing. So I think Miami is definitely a contender. Next, you got Philadelphia. For them, I'm going to go with pretender. If you tell me you get a committed Ben Simmons who won't choke in the playoffs, then I would move them up to contenders. But other than that, I just don't see them. I mean, of course, it's like the other teams, like Atlanta. You got Simmons, that's Embiid, who's a really, really good player, but then a bunch of B's and C's, So I just feel like they don't have another true all-star to kind of get them over the hump there. Plus, as we know, Doc Rivers chokes in the playoffs. So I don't trust coaching there. Next, you got Cleveland. So they're kind of like the darlings of the NBA right now. Everyone's all excited and see, oh, they're really good, But it's just like, for me, they're a pretender. Now, can they sneak their way into the playoffs? Sure, they can sneak their way into the playoffs. But it's like, are they going to do anything in the playoffs? The answer is no. I just don't see them going all the way. It's too young of a team. This is more of a rebuild situation. It's a good field story, don't get me wrong. But it's just like, they're still a year or two away from being actual true contenders. Next, you get Charlotte. For me, they're pretenders. Now, they've been having a bunch of injuries and COVID cases as well, kind of like Chicago, just a lot of COVID cases to deal with. But I just haven't liked what I've seen from them so far. Mainly it's because their defense is just so horrible. It's like that defense, like their defense will be the reason why they might not even make it the first round of the playoffs. They need to get better on that end before I can see them as contenders. Next, you got Boston. For me, I'm going to go with pretender. I didn't believe in them before the season, and I still don't. I haven't seen anything to make me think they're gonna, take the next step. With Tatum and Brown, because again, I don't like their depth. New York Knicks, pretender, and they've already showed their true colors so far. They're Julius Randle reliant / Derrick Rose reliant, basically. And if Evan Fournier doesn't go off, then they're really not that great. They've already benched Kemba Walker. They're just too much of a grinded out defense team, and if they can't win that type of style, then it's just hard for them to win games. So I think they're destined for the playing games this time, but it wouldn't shock me, they don't even make the playoffs. So now for the West, let's go. Let's go with Utah. So Utah, in my opinion, is definitely a contender, and I even said they should make the finals before the season started. I still hold true to that. While they're not looking as great as last year's team, they're still a better team. Because Gay, has come back from his injury, and he's shown some inconsistent nights, but he's shown the reason why it was a big acquisition in the offseason. He shows what he can produce. Whiteside has been a nice addition for the Jazz. Whenever Gobert has to go to the bench, it's still not great, but it's not doomsday scenario like it has been in past years. Whenever Gobert has to go to the bench for the Jazz. And then, Clarkson, and we have Clarkson and Ingles coming off the bench. It's a lot of production there. Now, the one problem for the Jazz is that, well, there's two problems. One, in clutch game situations, I know they beat, Cleveland in clutch game situation the other week, but there's been more oftentimes so far this season than not, that they've actually been struggling in clutch situations where they give up a shot, winning shot in the final seconds, or they can't make the shot to win or tie the game. I'm not sure if it's just purely bad play designing or if it's nerves or what, but Utah definitely has to get better at that department if they want to get to the finals. And then not only that, also would it help if they improve on the defense because they're the number one offense right now in the NBA. But yeah, like they're just so inconsistent on defense. It's something they need to do better at. Next, I'm going to go with um, Golden State, and they're obviously a contender. With Steph and Clay, assuming Clay's healthy and Draymond, you're always going to be contenders. And this year, they couldn't have asked for anything better to be off to such a good start without Klay Thompson. Next, you got the Clippers. I'm going to go with them as pretenders. Now, I know they made it last year to the conference finals without, Kawhi Leonard for a couple games and so forth, and they're a deep team. And if Kawhi comes back and he's good, then I obviously say change that to contender. But assuming, he doesn't, then my answer stands. As we saw last year, they can make some noise in the playoffs. They can get ups in the first round and all that. But especially with Tyronn Lue as a top three coach in the NBA. But I just feel like it's hard to get to back-to-back Western Conference Final appearances without your best player. That's just super hard to do for any team, let alone the Clippers. So I just don't see them getting back there. Portland. I feel like they're obviously a pretender. CJ McCollum's going to be out for a while, maybe even the whole season. So without him, you're screwed. Basically, Portland has to make a big trade at the trading deadline if they want to become relevant. But they're destined for the playing games, in my opinion, and wouldn't surprise me if they don't even make the playoffs at this point. Next, you got Dallas. Now, I know it doesn't look like it right now, but I'm going to say contender, and kind of with an apostrophe, with like a little, kind of like a little note on the side saying if they make a trade deadline move, because I feel like Dallas has not even figured out who they are. But yet, they've gotten some good wins so far this season. Now, Luka, he's been off and on injured with an ankle off season, which is obviously hurting KP's whenever he's available. Because he's been injured sometimes, but whenever he's available, he's redeemed himself to compare to how he was playing last year. And like I said, they need to make a trade at the trade line. Finney Smith's a good defensive player, but they just need more 3-and-D guys. Bullock hasn't produced so far. Sterling Brown has produced so far. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been very hot and cold. Now, Brunson's been a good addition, but he's not a 3-and-D guy. So they need to make another trade, like getting a Chris LeVert from the Pacers or something like that in order to kind of get themselves over the hump there. Next, Phoenix. They're obviously a contender. I'm not sure if they're going to make the finals again this time like they did last year, but I can definitely at least see them getting back to the Western Conference Finals. Because remember, they returned mostly everyone, and they got better in the offseason with like JaVale McGee and Landry Shamet and so forth. Next, you got the Lakers. I'm going with them as pretenders. I know. Pretenders, what are you thinking? But I don't think the Lakers can make Western Conference. Again, there's always a trading deadline move. They can change my mind here. But this team's oldness looks like it's more of a disadvantage than an advantage. Players are still figuring out the roles. Westbrook just doesn't really fit with everyone. And I just don't think it's going to work. Memphis, I'm going with them as pretenders. Like, teams Washington, Atlanta, you got John Morant, who's really good, but then you got a bunch of B's and C's players, so they can easily make the playoffs and all that, but I just don't see them, especially once, getting all the way to the Western Conference Finals. I just don't see that. So there you go. So those are, again, so to review who the contenders in the East, I feel like Brooklyn, Chicago, Miami, and Milwaukee are contenders in the East. And typically, you're not going to have more than 4 contenders each conference. And then in the West, I have Golden State, Phoenix, Utah, and Dallas as contenders. Now, again, with trading deadline moves, this could all change because the trading deadline is not until I think the beginning of February or something. So you still got a while. But as of right now, what my eye test is telling me and all that, and how things are looking, that's what I see right now. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel to learn about me. Thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful day.